welcome everybody to another Tech Talk from Digital Jersey and Island Insurance. Today we'll be hearing from Mike Norbury, and he'll be talking to you about protecting against the unforeseen. We'll be seeing lots of examples and talking about lots of case studies to do with payroll companies, ticketing events, cameras, from ranging ages, from schools to big business. So it proves to be a very interesting talk, and why having digital insurance is kind of inevitable for every business going forward. So rather than steal his thunder, I'll introduce Mike, and if you could turn his camera on and his microphone, and we'll get going with your presentation. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, please put them into the chat and we will answer them at the question and answer session to the end. Hi, Mike.
Thank you for the introduction, and to everyone, thank you for joining me today on our talk regarding protection against the unforeseen. So before we get started, what I want to goes along. Okay, so just a little bit about Islands Insurance Group for those who don't know. We've been established since 1978 with offices across the Channel Islands in Jersey, Guernsey and Alderney. I'm a senior account executive here in the Jersey office. And we assist, broke on behalf of local businesses, including technology companies, but also islanders as well. So in 2021, we made the decision to become a Digital Jersey member because we wanted to further support the growing technology industry here in Jersey. So, so first off, it's kind of the importance of getting it right. Now, really, these are the reasons why that you should be considering the right type of insurance products and making sure you have the right risk management processes in place. So what we found, or what's been identified by Markel Insurance, is that 69% of technology companies do not have the right insurance cover. Now that's quite a striking statistic, that nearly 7 in 10 technology companies don't have the cover, which they believe that they do. Now the concern here is that without it being unchecked, the only time they may find out about it is when they actually have an incident, have a claim, and they're looking for support from their insurer. So having the right insurance policy in place will allow the tech company to use the resource, to focus the resources on their intended purpose. Now that's their financial resources, but also their managerial time as well. They want to spend it on developing the company, not defending an allegation. What you also find is, well, in many occasions there'll be clients who will have contractual requirements that you hold particular types of insurances. Now, this could be professional indemnity, cyber, or a combination of both. Fundamentally, the clients wants to have the confidence that if there is an error, that you have the financial backing of an insurer to compensate them for any loss that they may suffer. But also investors, if you are taking investors on board, they want to know that and be comfortable that their investments are being used for the purposes that they were intended, by developing the products, the services, in effect growing the business, not being used to defend an action or to cover the costs that may be incurred. Now, technology has definitely been striving and moving forward a lot faster than, say, your traditional insurance products. And though technology companies do face the general exposure, i.e. injury to members of the public, fires or flood damage to their properties, they do have some relatively kind of unique and more specific exposures, which they need a specialist product to cover. Now, kind of the types of incidents we're talking about is the vicarious liability. Tech companies, especially those where it allows user input third-party users can post their own content. There's the potential of being the technology company being held accountable for the acts or the statements made by those parties. There's also the Internet of Things. We're bringing kind of a cyber threat into what was previously standard products. I mean, there's one case, don't know if you're aware of, where a casino in North America was hacked via their fish tank, and a significant amount of data was being lost. I mean, it sounds like something from a movie script, and maybe this is going to be the kind of Ocean's 20 that we're going to see. I don't know. There's also IP exposures. For a lot of tech company, their principal assets is the intangible assets that they hold. Now, they may need to protect them from allegations of infringement, which could be made by far larger tech companies, or could be from patent trolls as well. Now, these claims are very expensive to defend. So again, you may want the financial resource of an insurer behind you there. And there's also AI instances as well. Now, AI is bringing about a number of questions as to who should be held accountable where there is an incident arises which involves AI. And general traditional insurance products just aren't structured to cover those. There's also regulatory and legislative issues. As these parties are trying to keep up with the technology industry, and we're seeing suggestions of changes to the competition laws. There's the proposed online harms bill, which is proposing that technology companies should be responsible for taking down harmful content. Now, it doesn't specifically have to be illegal, it just has to be harmful. And also the suggestion being that where the tech companies aren't abiding by this, that the senior executives could be held personally accountable for this, but also that the service could be banned from their territory, in this case, the UK. Oh, sorry, just go back. Jumped ahead of myself. So some of the things about the insurance products as well. I mean, I think for most, insurance is seen as very much a kind of a reactive solution, i.e. it only does something when an incident occurs. Now, many insurers now, what they're actually doing is they're providing kind of value-added products in advance, which can in effect help to either avoid a loss or reduce the extent should one occur. Now, this may include providing free legal advice in regards to business and contract matters. Also providing general kind of risk management advice, but also advanced breach notifications. So they can actually notify you if they suspect you've suffered a breach before you've even become aware, or even the threat actor makes themselves known. Also, you find many insurers, they'll have a panel of specialist advisors. These can be legal advisors, but also IT forensics. And these providers, in most cases, have probably come across the incident which you are faced with, which means that they're probably in a better position to deal with it in a far swifter and economic way. And it could potentially be in a way which avoids you needing to go to the costly and also the stressful process of taking it to the courts. You may also find that it's more mutually, you can come to a mutually beneficial agreement with the other party, which could also result in maintaining a relationship which you continue to work forward and move forward with. So here is kind of why. Now, what I've done is I've just picked out 4 cases or 4 instances which have involved tech companies which were announced in March alone. And this is 4 out of, tens and hundreds of cases which we could choose. So the first is the former childcare commissioner for England is bringing an action against a video sharing app, suing them over alleged illegal processing of children's personal data, and they're acting on behalf of 3.5 million children in the UK. In addition to this, and separately, there's been allegations made in regards to the technology company's ability to control who is actually gaining access to this platform as well. There's also a security company, a security camera startup, which provided digitally linked CCTV cameras, have been hacked. Now, the way they've been hacked is that a third party gained access to administrators' username and also their passwords, which allowed them to access over 150,000 live feeds, which were installed within hospitals, companies, some of them very well known that you'll be aware of, police departments, prisons and schools. And the hackers have advised that by gaining access via this startup, they've also got access to their clients' own networks so that they can perform further attacks. Now, interesting thing about this is that, in this case in particular, is that there doesn't appear to have been any ransom that has been requested. That wasn't the purpose of the attack. It seems the purpose of the attack was, one, they wanted to prove that they could do it, but they also wanted to demonstrate to the wider world the extent of surveillance which is currently being undertaken, which they don't believe in. There's also the next case, European e-ticketing platform, where they provided a facility for zoos, museums, entertainment parks to provide online tickets. Now, their system has been breached, given and extracted was over 1.9 million records of individuals who had used the site to gain online tickets. They had received a ransomware attack, ransomware demand, which was 7 bitcoins, which amounted to $337,000. What I would say as well is that it's been reported in the news that that information, the data that was stolen, has actually been released into the public domain as well. And the final one is a leading payroll company who suffered a ransomware attack as well, which disabled their systems and who have 80,000 company clients with over 2 million members of staff. And those clients who use the hosted customer portals were unable to gain access to these systems, causing a disruption to their business. Now, each of these events has the potential of resulting in numerous different types of losses covered over various types of policies, from losses to the company's own systems, so i.e. repairing their own system, losses of revenue due to disruption to their service, but also from clients moving away from them, i.e. the reputational damage that they'll go to a competitor because they feel their data is more secure. There's also their own, they may need to make the ransom payments themselves. But there's also actions by third parties. You know, if their clients' systems have been have been breached. There may be a disruption to their system. There may be loss of commercially confidential information, but also personal data of their own customers, meaning that they've got to make notifications to those individuals. All these costs, they may look to recover from the tech company who they're holding responsible for these incidents. And there's, of course, there's also investigations by the ICO, both against the tech company, but also against the underlying companies that need to be considered. As I say, you can see how these claims can get very complex, and the costs can build up significantly very, very quickly. One thing that's, tech companies evolve very quickly, and a statistic which was provided back in 2018 was that the tech industry is growing 2.6 times faster than any other industry in the UK. Now, to that point, I'd say just look at Zoom. I think kind of around about 13 months ago, very few people knew about Zoom, and in a period of 12 months, their share price has gone up by over 500%. That's quite significant. So what I'm saying to this point is that really tech companies should be considering how their risks are evolving as they grow. So first off, you may have a startup, and this could be a single individual. They've got their laptop. They don't have a premises, like they work from home or wherever they can get Wi-Fi access, and they may have one or just a couple of clients. But as the company expands, they may take on more clients. As a result, they recruit employees, and they may look to occupy a fixed location. Also, they may change their trading status as well, from say a sole trader to a private limited company. And as they grow further, they may take on larger contracts. They may diversify the business activities that they're providing. They may look to acquire other companies and bring those services into thetheir business. They may also look to take on clients in other territories. Be a new move, a new opportunity for them. Last off, there is their exits. The founders, the board may look to exit and need insurance solutions to, in effect, to cover off the potential exposures from there. So what I've done here is I've put a kind of an illustration together of maybe the types of covers that technology companies may want to consider based upon different segments of their business and what they're doing. This is just for illustrative purposes only, and it doesn't mean that you do need that cover. If you do have that section of the business, there is an element of, yes, as you'll see. So first off, if you've got clients, you may need professional indemnity insurance. If you're providing a professional service or advice, and a client suffers a financial loss as a result, or there's a bodily injury or property damage, they may look for recompense from you. But also there's public liability. If a third party is injured due to your negligence, or their property is damaged, this would be potentially covered under a public liability policy. So if you're providing a product, you may find that your product is in effect the most valuable thing in your company, and therefore you need to protect that asset if there is intellectual property involved. So you may want to consider intellectual property insurance. But also there's product liability. Now, if an individual is injured or their property is damaged due to one of your products, they may look for compensation for you. There may also just be a case that there is nothing wrong with the product just doesn't work, and they'll look to recover costs for you as a result of that. And this is to say, premises. If you have premises, it's more of a kind of a traditional insurance. What if your premises were damaged? That could be due to fire, it could be due to water damage, they could be theft as well. And as much as we think about premises, you can also think about your contents, just your general contents, but it could also be your computer and your electronic equipment. Now, damage to these items may result in a business interruption to yourself, i.e. that there is a loss of revenue, or you have to incur additional costs to maintain your business. You may also, if you're in the R&D stage, there may be R&D expense that you want to be able to recover. So you may need the business interruption cover. But also, for those parties who manage and provide supervisory or have supervisory responsibilities within the company, they can be held personally responsible for losses suffered by other parties as a result of the mismanagement of the company. Now, to name a few, this could be investors, shareholders. It could also be from regulators, but it could also be from suppliers. There's also, if the company does have a particular individual or a couple of individuals who are really the driving force behind the company, what would happen if they were no longer able to provide that service? What happens if something happened to them? What would be the financial consequence to the company of them no longer being involved? Lastly, is employees. Now, if you do have employees, there is a legal requirement in the UK and in the Channel Islands that you should have employers' liability insurance. Now, if you have employees in other territories, there may be a requirement for you to have workers' compensation, i.e. in particular the US. There's also, we're seeing an increase in claims in one particular area, which is employment practice liability. Now, this is where an employee, kind of past or present, makes allegations against the employer for breaches of employment law. Now, this could be discrimination, this could be harassment, this could be unfair dismissal. The last ones which I've included is, I've included cyber crime, but I haven't really attached it to anything because I think it's such a broad exposure which just can infiltrate any area of a business. There's also transactional liability. And this really relates to those times where, at the point where the board are looking to exit, or the owners are looking to exit, and they want a clean exit. So in effect, they want to relinquish themselves from any liabilities which attach to the sale of the business. We're now coming on to, as I say, the case studies which I have, which is the first one is MSP ransomware attacks. Now, insurers are seeing an increase in these types of instances where ransomware attacks are being suffered by MSPs. Part of the reason for this is the potential access to the MSP's clients, who in a lot of occasions are far larger, and therefore there is far greater opportunity for the threat actors to in effect benefit financially. What is also concerning, a report by the Ponemon Institute identified that 59% of IT and technology companies who they asked questions of advise that they do not have the funds to allocate to adequate cyber security. Now that's quite a concerning figure when you really, for other companies, they're expecting them to provide the the defence to ensure that their clients' own networks aren't penetrated. And these can result in various types of losses. First, there's the first-party losses, where the MSP has to investigate and suffer remediation costs and potentially pay extortion costs. As a result of the incidents, there may also be notification costs if they themselves have lost personal data, but also notifying their clients that their systems may be affected. And as a result of that, there may be a loss of revenue again, where if that's due to the disruption, but also reputational damage, where those individuals have decided to move their business to a competitor. But there's also, again, the third-party costs, where the underlying clients may have suffered disruption to their business, meaning there's been a loss of revenue, which they want to be compensated for. But also, if their data and the personal data that they hold has been compromised, they may need to make notifications to those individuals themselves. All of these costs can be significant. We're also starting to see, in regards to kind of data protection claims, class actions being taken, where, which really means, even though the claims amounts may be relatively small, it may be in the kind of the low thousands, just the accumulation of the numbers can result in significant and very high losses, of which those clients may look to want to recover those losses and those amounts from their MSP. So, I think it's important therefore to kind of really consider appropriate risk management measures. And I think the first point is to appoint an individual who with the cybersecurity responsibilities. Now, this individual should have the capability and have the expertise to be able to provide these services. But also, multi-factor authentication should be used on all occasions without an exception. At least if the usernames and password has been stolen or has been discovered via a brute force attack, it's still going to make it very difficult for the threat actors to gain access. Also, the MSP may want to look at implementing IP restrictions, where remote administration tools are only available when being requested from the MSP's local IP. In regards to remote monitoring and management software, when patches do become available to cover and to protect against known vulnerabilities, these should be implemented as promptly as possible. But also, if a third party does gain access into a user's account, should consider operating on the basis of least privilege. So, if limiting what the third party can gain access to over the system. And importantly, these should be evaluated on a regular basis. But there's also strong passwords. Default passwords shouldn't be used. Ones which are easily guessed, again from a brute force attack. The National Cybersecurity Centre suggests using 3 random words. But also backups. Backups should be taken regularly and over kind of multiple formats, and to be kept offline and off-site. And importantly, the backup should be tested on a regular basis. I know of a number of cases where insurers have had instances where they've gone to recover the data from the backup, only to discover that the backups have been failing, and this has resulted in further disruption to the company and also a significantly higher loss, as in effect they've had to work from the ground up rather than from the most recent backup which hasn't been breached. So these are all kind of risk management measures which you may want to consider to, in effect, limit the possibility of such instances occurring to them. Another common area where we see claims in the technology sector is breaches of contract. Now, this can be where IT companies, technology companies have missed deadlines, the failure of the product or service to meet the clients or their contractual specification, and inadequate service level. At times, this has been the result of a miscommunication. In effect, the IT company, the technology company, they provide a Fiesta, but in effect, the client is expecting a Bentley. As you can expect, that there's some dissatisfaction there. So, I think first off is the most important thing is to kind of manage clients' expectations and to ensure that there is kind of a clarity of terms. Avoid using ambiguous terms and make sure there is an understanding. But also obtain all the contracting parties' written agreement at the outset, but also, and importantly, when there are variations to the contract and the specifications. And throughout the whole project or the contract, ensure that you maintain open communication channels with the client, keep giving them regular updates as to what's happening. But also be aware if there's a change of personnel at the clients. You may find that this individual may take a different view on the contract, they may be more aggressive, so you may need to kind of manage that situation. And also, if you're using subcontractors or freelancers, make sure that they have the capabilities to provide the service that you require within the deadline, within the time commitments that is required. And also, if you can, see if they have the required insurances. If the underlying client suffers a loss as a result of the negligence or the errors of subcontractor or a freelancer, initially they're going to make the claim against you. Now, you may want to make a claim yourself, or your insurers may want to make a claim yourself against those individuals. So by ensuring that they have suitable insurance in place, means that it's more likely that you'll be able to move that loss off of your books and your loss history onto the party whose act has resulted in such the claim arising. I think it's also important, for a company, especially when they're starting out and they're looking to grow, there may be great opportunity. They may come across great opportunities, but I think it's worth considering: do you have the capabilities of actually fulfilling that contract, and basing your kind of decisions upon that? Because such instances where you haven't met the client's demands, rightly or they may be within their right, or it may be a frivolous allegation. It's still going to cause a lot of reputational damage to yourself. It's going to take up a lot, and it's still going to take up a lot of your time. And in regards to your contracts, maybe you should consider putting in place kind of limitations of liability. This is where you put in place caps as to the maximum amounts that you can be held accountable for. Now, this may be a multiple of the the contract fee, or a particular sum. You may also want to consider excluding consequential losses and loss of profits. These are additional losses which the client may suffer as a result of an error. It could be their loss of product by not getting the service or the product out to market. And these can be significant and very difficult to gauge. Now, what I would say in regards to limitation of liability and excluding certain losses is that you really should, I would recommend kind of taking legal advice on there, because just because you have it written in your contract, if the contract is put in front of the courts, there is potential that, you know, it could, the condition could be seen as being unreasonable, and therefore would not apply, and therefore you should take legal advice to ensure you're in the best position possible. So we're coming to the end of the presentation, and I just wanted to kind of round up with kind of a few thoughts. So I think what is important to do is to really kind of consider what your current and your evolving exposures are. You know, you may be an idea to kind of do some research into the types of losses that your peers are suffering, or, you know, have a chat with an insurance broker to find out what their thoughts are, and maybe they can give you some guidance as well. But also implement good risk management. I know it's probably it's not as exciting as, you know, developing your product, your service, going to market, making new contacts, but it really can be kind of time well spent and can save you a huge amount of distress in the future. So, and as I said, Islands Insurance are now members of Digital Jersey, and we are looking to support the members. So a part of this, will involve having a weekly residence at the DJ Hub. So if you do have any questions and you want to run it past ourselves, there'll be someone there who will be able to give you advice and give you a bit of guidance. But also policy health checks. As I said, Mark L had identified 69% of tech companies don't have the most appropriate cover. So this may just give you an opportunity to really kind of identify, you know, the cover you have in place at the moment, is it correct for you, or do amendments need to be made? So that's the end of the presentation. I'd like to say thank you for everyone who's joined us today. Sorry I've gone a few minutes over, but based on my previous presentations, you know, that's quite, I've done quite well there. So I'll pass you back to Rory.
Thanks, Mike. That's great. I've been feverishly making notes, actually, because there's lots of things there that personally I find very interesting as well. And, you know, so much to discuss. And, you know, we were discussing before, it seems to be like a nice to have many years ago, digital kind of insurance. It was one of those things that you were kind of perceiving yourself as a forward-thinking company if you were considering it. But it's inevitable, I would say, and therefore essential. So have you seen an increase in awareness, or more worryingly, have you not?
Yes, I mean, I suppose what we've seen, I think companies are becoming more aware. For companies working in particular sectors, I think they probably appreciate their exposure far more. But what's probably more worrying is there are, you know, particular sectors who don't perceive themselves to have a cyber exposure. Now, the problem about that is that if you don't perceive yourself to have a cyber exposure, why would you try and defend against it? Which makes them the low-hanging fruit and, in effect, more prone to kind of suffer a loss. So I think as, you know, as society embraces technology more wider, they become more dependent upon it, it is going to become a greater risk. And, you know, we are seeing claims coming in where in regards to kind of data breaches, but also losses of funds as a result of criminal acts.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it came up quite a lot, Data Protection Jersey Law, or GDPR as most people know it. And, you know, what was quite nice you were mentioning there about kind of a health check is I don't think people possibly might understand fully where that kind of liability lands in their organization, because there's sometimes a misunderstanding between who's the processor, who's the controller, and, you know, who's ultimately going to be liable. Do your processors have insurance? Does that cover you? Does it not? What happens if they go bust? There's so many questions around GDPR. Would you say that that's an education piece that needs to happen as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we hear quite often by clients is that, you know, you know, all the information is stored in the cloud, or it's been looked after by hosted by the MSP, and there's sometimes this kind of thought that or if there is a data breach, it'll be them who are responsible. But the individuals have entrusted you as the company to hold their personal data. So they're going to be coming to you and looking for recompense from you. And also the ICO is going to undertake an investigation against you as you're the data controller.
Exactly. And that leads on quite nicely because, cloud services are on the rise. And in many respects, I think that's a very good thing, because I think the security that most of the third-party providers hold is probably better than what could be hosted locally. That's a controversial point, but one I believe in. But then you lose that element slightly of control or understanding about the services and the security the other end of that third party. And you mentioned downtime as well, people looking for that client lost revenue going forward. So do you see, have you seen, or what are the differences to you fundamentally between hosting the data yourself or hosting it with a third party? Are there bigger, smaller risks? Is it something you think about?
Well, I mean, I think the general, I don't think there is a silver bullet, and though we have a lot of kind of cloud storing things on the cloud, you do get the benefit of, I believe, kind of additional levels of security, but they are not foolproof. I mean, I think it was last year, probably 2019 now, was the cloud provider Blackboard, where they were hacked, and there was, and they held a lot of information on behalf of educational facilities, but also charities. So they're not impenetrable, definitely not. And I think they are a target by cyber criminals because, if you can break into the cloud, there's a kind of a treasure trove of information and data and opportunities there for them as well. So I think it's about being kind of aware of the risk. I mean, there are benefits of hosting it yourself as well. You may not be so likely to suffer attack. You may not be, but you're taking responsibility for the security of the system.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's that keyword risk, isn't it? And about managing that. You mentioned ransomware as well. And, I know that it happens in the Channel Islands, or has happened in the Channel Islands. And I think sometimes people think that maybe, we're just this small little place in the middle of nowhere where nothing really happens and is overlooked. How much are these kind of risks increasing to the everyday business, and especially the smaller businesses as well?
Well, I think it's one of the benefits of living on a small island. I mean, you are shielded from a lot of crimes. Unfortunately, the internet does not prevent us from being shielded from cyber instances. The criminals can be anywhere in the world, and they can launch an attack. And yes, it doesn't really matter where you are located. So there, I suppose, yes, we are as much of under threat as any other country across the world. But it's quite interesting. You're talking about, you spoke about earlier about GDPR. And one of the consequences of GDPR is with ransomware attacks was that previously, the ransomware demand would be, you pay us this money or we delete all your data. So companies, in effect, have kind of got a bit wise to this. They've started making sure they've got robust backups in place. But what GDPR has now meant is that ransomware actors, what they're now doing is turn around saying, either pay us this ransom or we're going to release your data. And that causes a huge amount of issues. One, because you've got the ICO investigations, but also the reputational damage with your clients. And one of the cases which I mentioned earlier with regards to the e-ticketing service, there was the threat, you pay the ransom or we release the data of the 1.9 million individuals that we've managed to extract from your system.
Yeah, and it's because I quite regularly check the services that you can check online to see if your email address has been breached by any company, and your data is searchable
Yeah,
online. And it is quite sobering to see how many of the big players are involved in those data breaches. But as you're saying there, the criminals evolve, don't they? You close one
yeah.
door, they open up another, and that GDPR breaching is key. I mean, we were talking as well, last Friday in the JEP, it's talking about fraud is evolving, and the news was that scammers have taken almost £400,000 in Jersey since January, and that's doubling what it has this time last year, according to the police. And it just shows that those things, and I would be unsurprised if it wasn't digital, that's contributing to that significantly. Because do you hear many stories about personal or the average person, I would say, getting affected by this? Because one of the things I've been watching online a lot with YouTube and stuff like that recently are scammers persuading everybody to there's something wrong with their system. They need to log into a certain system to fix it. And while we
Yep.
might think that that is kind of out of the reach of businesses, you could very easily see businesses spoof the support agency for that particular business and say, oh, it's your local IT support. I see your computer's affected. We're just going to remote log in and check that and the other. Have you seen a growth area in that form of scam?
Yes, yeah, and there's certain kind of online providers. Individuals receiving calls purported to be from them, their security services, saying that there has been a breach of your account, and there's been money that's been paid over to us, which we want to pay back to you. And they're quite clever, they're quite sophisticated in that the first thing they do is they put money in your account to kind of gain that trust. And then they request the remote access on the basis they just want to check your system, make sure everything is okay. But what you don't realize behind the scenes is they're going into your bank account, they're taking money out, they're taking loans. And really the only time you find about it is after they've hung up and you look at your account. It is challenging, and I think there is a need for kind of education of all individuals, both in a business environment, but also in a personal environment, in kind of cybersecurity and what to be aware of. I mean, one thing that we've seen the evolving of social engineering. Previously it was a threat actor would impersonate a supplier and send an invoice to a client for an amount of money with a change of bank details. Now, it's in a lot of industries, it's widely known and accepted that if you get you're setting up a new payment or you there's a change of bank details, that you phone those individuals on an independently obtained telephone number and obtain confirmation of what their bank account details are before you make the payment. Now what we are seeing is that these the hackers, they're sitting onto a supplier's IT system, and they're sending out invoices to the third party purporting to be from them, saying that this payment needs to be received. Now, what you're doing there is you're having to rely on that individual, and in some cases it is just individuals rather than companies, following the same risk management processes, and making a call to make sure that the details are correct. What we have seen is there have been cases where those invoices have been paid. Now, you get in a very difficult situation here because it's the supplier's IT system that's been hacked, and the client has paid the invoice in good faith. Who should be responsible for that loss of money?
Exactly, and like you're saying there, computer systems are fairly robust, and while we do hear about hacking, it's people that are usually the weakest link in the system, and they're who are targeted. And I suppose that's exactly why you're there to step in for when the unplannable happens in that respect. And it's been a great conversation. And I always like to leave these kind of conversations with kind of a more forward-thinking angle to do with the topic. And we've been talking a lot now. It's been making news a lot now with deep fakes, and you were talking about that. Well, we ring someone up as a proof of confirmation that this action needs to happen, but the actual proof of confirmation is getting harder and harder to obtain. A signature used to be the be all and end all. We are now getting people ringing us up with fake conversations, spoofing email accounts, and now we are starting to not even trust video with the advent of deep fakes. I think people may have seen the whole Tom Cruise kind of scenario going around social media or not, and I was picking on something earlier. How do you see that digital insurance? I mean, it's probably a loaded question, seeing as I'm talking to an insurance company, really. But how do you see the prediction of the future? In other words, how can you insure against something that is so kind of fringe these days that it's quite difficult to anticipate, or are we always going to be playing catch up?
I think it's getting challenging. In the US, where the cyber insurance market is far more mature, they're seeing significant increases in the premium, but more importantly, restrictions of cover, i.e. removing cover for ransomware attacks, requiring co-insurance with the policyholder, i.e. the policyholder is expected to take responsibility for a proportion of any ransom demand made. I think it really, yes, it's going to be challenging as kind of the criminals change their operators mirandi, and I think it's going to be a case of kind of more robust risk management, and people becoming aware and more educated to try and limit these losses as possible, so that they can be controlled.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. That's great. And thank you for talking in response to Ireland's insurance perception on these things. And for everybody else, the tech talks are going to be continuing. We have many more coming up. If you go to Eventbrite or Digital Jersey's pages and have a look, there's a wide ranging events coming in the future. Some real eye-opening things there. And, many people may be thinking it's just insurance. It said, no, it's intertwined with everything now. And the digital landscape is changing. And as you've said, education, and really being abreast of the risks that are now coming faster and more evolved every day. So thank you very much. And you'll be able to find this recording if you missed the very beginning on the Digital Jersey channel shortly. Thank you very much, and bye, Mike.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.